The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Welcome, guys, and happy Wednesday before Thanksgiving. It's a special Wednesday this week. We have our Thanksgiving shirts on. Scott says...
You guys can't see him from there.
What does yours say?
She's my sweet potato.
And mine says, I am. All right. I am. We're doing a pretty serious topic today for our Thanksgiving episode, but how many years in a row can we talk about food, right? So my quirky tip today, I'm doing the quirky tips for people that want to buy gifts for dog lovers or your own dogs, is pooches and palomas. So I actually ordered this, and they're out of the Border Collie. I just went back to their website to check. So I heard about this company, and I thought this was super cool. So she does her donations. Her website is I Drink to Save Dogs' Lives. I guess she was a mixologist. I believe the company owner's name is Danny White. But
any excuse will do.
But all of her proceeds have to do with this bonsai dog rescue. So a lot of stuff has to do with supporting rescue. A portion of the proceeds, I think, even goes to that. And I found the cutest little Patron at the New Hampshire liquor store. So Chrissy and I are going to have just a half shot because I don't drink hard alcohol, and I don't think that's going to be pretty on the podcast. And Scotty's going to have just the mix. But this
you
is
can
actually...
throw a shot over your shoulder from my mom.
This is actually... Yeah, Iris would take that whole thing down. This is actually Paloma Mix, so no alcohol is in that. And this one is called the Border Collie. And right now online, she doesn't have all the breeds. I don't think that she carries. She carries in some stores as well. But this is the Border Collie. I guess Palomas are supposed to be paired with tequila, so I bought a little baby thing of Patron. So Chrissy and I are going to try, and Scotty's just going to get the mix. But the doodle was still available. So if you have any doodle lovers in your life, I just think this is a freaking great gift, great stocking stuff or something else. So I am not going to pour back and forth. I'm going to hand one over to Chrissy.
Why, thank you.
Cheers. And I'm not going to even
Happy
cheers because I don't want to
Day.
spill. Cheers.
Happy Turkey Eve.
Cheers.
Yeah, happy Turkey Eve. This is actually, I think, the biggest drinking day in America, I think.
Wow.
Because everybody's home for the holidays. So cheers. I'm going to
Cheers,
taste my
everybody.
Paloma. Oh, I can smell the tequila.
Very sweet.
Woo, a little less sweet with the tequila. All right, very good. Okay, so we're drinking Palomas, and we're talking about what to do if you lose your dog today. We have had some close run-ins with this with a few friends as of recently, and this is a topic if you own dogs, and this comes, up at some point. Nothing is more stressful than not knowing where your dog is. So we're going to unpack a bunch of tips all today to help you guys prepare for the worst and hopefully work through the worst if you see that happening. So where did your origin of this topic come up? Because you're the one that said,
Well, we've had a couple of friends over the past several weeks
that
have lost their dogs. So, and we also have many people we know have had these issues where they've lost a dog, for a certain period of time, and then found their dog. So, of course, I'm always thinking, be proactive and make sure your dog comes when you call him. But there are times when, a dog can disappear on you very quickly. If you're out in the woods, you turn your back, you turn around, the dog is gone.
Yeah.
And especially if you have some of these breeds like the Beagles and the Hounds that get on a trail and just take off. And, just because the dog has good obedience, if they have this propensity to roam, if you're not paying attention, all of a sudden they can disappear on you.
Yeah, and frequently, we've had many clients over the years that, will do services with us, either classes or boot camps, because their dog chronically runs away. Like, they have chased their dog dozens of times. They, get out of the yard, get out of the front door, everything else, but the dog is still lost. So we're going to unpack a bunch of different scenarios and give you guys a bunch of tips here today. My first tip is, I've talked about this before, but these are great things that you can secure on your crates. I actually still have not done it, even since I talked about it on the previous podcast, because our dogs really just aren't traveling that frequently, and when Jimmy's traveling, he's not in a crate. But I was thinking, if you had one of these for your crate, if you're frequently traveling with your dog in a crate, whatever else in the car, and you had, a picture of them with their information about rabies and everything else, if for some reason you lost your dog away from home, this is a really nice, handy thing to have in your car to take out a piece of paper and say, go make Xerox copies of this so we can put these on all kinds of posts and everything everywhere. So if you have some sort of system in your car that has to do with identifying your dog in case there was a car accident or something else, I would highly recommend that there's a picture in there on just like 8.5 by 11 paper that you could, if need be, say to a stranger or someone helping you, like, hey, can you go make 100 copies of these and post them all over town? So that's a little side note there. What are some tips that you have, hun? We reached out to some authorities too for some of help on this because we really wanted to serve you guys as best as possible.
Well, I would say with regard to the photo that I would try to update that photo at least once a year.
Yes.
Because a lot of people take a picture of their dog when their dog is a year or too old, and now it's missing at 7 or 8, and it looks maybe a lot different. It could be gray. There's any number of things that could change the appearance of the dog.
Yeah,
so you want
so
a very
an updated photo.
current photo
Yeah.
is important.
Yeah. Or even a haircut, right? Like updated photo is a smart idea.
Yeah. Do you want me to get into some of these tips that we?
Yeah, let's just,
So
I just want to
we got in
give you
touch
guys
with
a bunch of stuff.
an animal control officer that's a friend of ours to hear what she had to say, and it wasn't much different than what we were thinking, but it was nice to get her feedback. So the first thing she said, of course, was always have dog tags on your dog that have identification, a phone number. With our dogs, we don't typically have tags, but we have the phone number embroidered into the collars they wear. So there is a way for that dog to, if someone can call us, and also the microchipping. We have our dogs microchipped, and the other thing that I was thinking with regard to that is get online and update if you move or that dog changes hands, update on the website of the chip company the contact information.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, you get a dog from a rescue, it's got a chip in it. That chip might go to 1,000 miles away, has nothing to do with the dog and you any longer.
Yeah, and if someone calls that person and says, oh, like, are you responsible for this dog? If you lost this dog, they could say, no, we rehomed this dog, 5 years ago. So then whoever brings the dog in, it will be their dog. And the thing about the collars and stuff is really important, you guys. Like, even when I take my girls on our property, Sank doesn't always have identification on. I have, pretty amazing control of Sank. And I have good control of Vital too, but I know that there's more of a propensity that maybe she could chase. So she always has a name collar on her with a phone number, so she could always come right back to me. But be conscious of, as you're leaving your house, even if your dog is on a leash, I'm preparing. There's steps you're taking to prepare as you leave the house. When Scott goes to take Jimmy in the car, he's very well trained. He's his demo dog. He does everything all the time. No e-collar, always off leash. I put that name collar on. If they were to get in an accident, I want somebody to be able to call me if Jimmy's not loose. I want Jimmy to be, if something random happens, we're always preparing. So don't underestimate the tag collar situation. It's very important.
Me, I could put him in a down during a class and then drive away and forget to take my dog with me.
Honestly, if we're going to go there, Shelby, if you watch, Scott left Jimmy at Veneris one night. And we had an employee that was living there, but he came home. It was like 7 p.m. and he walks in and I'm like, here's Jimmy's food. And he goes, oh my God, he's not here. He left him on the bed.
He was still on his dog bed
in
my office.
He won't leave Jimmy in a down anywhere. He loves Jimmy more than me.
We're talking about these miraculous call-offs. Maybe you should share your story from last night.
Oh my God. So I might drink a lot on this podcast. So, Vital, we had the cat run in a few weeks ago and went great. Like, I was so freaking impressed with her. I couldn't believe it. Like, scream Vital here. The neighbors are like, what's going on? I go to let her out last night. There's an opossum, or how do you say, just possum? There's a possum standing right in our yard, like the gravel, like they're literally nose to nose. I go to let her out before going to bed. So again, my call off worked, but I'm really testing it these days.
There was no collar on the possum.
No, but I like stuff like that. I mean, she's listening. Like, she's a good listener. She doesn't wear any collar, but stuff like that, I couldn't believe it. Like, they were nose to nose. I said Vital here, and the possum didn't scratch her or something, but I don't want her catching something. But this brings us to have a phenomenal recall on your dog. If your dog is off leash, and you are hiking or you are on your property, or I don't care where you freaking are, if you're in the vet's parking lot and you think your dog listens well, your recall better be phenomenal, like to the point where you can put down a McDonald's hamburger and your dog peels off of it. That is what we expect of our dogs being off leash. And I've got to test it frequently, and it's been working, but I got to put more money in the bank now.
When you yelled for your dog, I jumped off the couch.
That's what happened when you were gone the other day.
Startling.
When she went after the cat, because I normally I'm like Vital here and she listens, but I get like very emotional. So you got to be conscious. Have a very good recall. What else did we get?
Okay, of course. This seems obvious to me, but
let me have some of your mix since you think
you want to contact animal control to your town and the police department, local police department.
Immediately.
Let them know what's going on as soon as that.
Immediately.
Yeah. And also what the animal control officer mentioned that I didn't think about was contact surrounding town animal control officers so that, you're really spreading that word out that there's a dog missing. They might jump in someone's car and then jump out and run away again. Who knows?
We were talking about, like, even in New England, we have a lot of, like, adjoining towns, right? We just took our dogs to our Eastern vet in Belchertown this Monday together. And, like, you're driving through towns, like, I feel like every 3 minutes, it's like a new town. Here's Shutesbury, here's New Salem, here's this, here's this. So in New England, a lot of times, if you're really, like, closely centered to another town or another state, it's important to get the word out elsewhere. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. The flyers, if you haven't, had eyes on your dog for a few hours, then
that's your next step.
You can start making flyers. That's not my first step, but that's something I'd be doing if I get to a point where I'm like, because usually the way I look at it, if you lose sight of your dog, chances are you'll get them back within an hour. If they ran into the woods and you're calling, clapping your hands, and then before you start calling in the cavalry, the dog probably is going to show up again. But if you're walking out of the woods without your dog, you want to be getting some flyers made and doing this stuff.
Getting the word out. Public word is important.
In the state of Massachusetts, there's a organization called Missing Dogs Massachusetts. I'm not sure if it's a website, but the animal control officer mentioned that. You want to contact them. If you're in the state of New Hampshire, there's Granite State Dog Recovery, which is another, I'm not sure what type of organization it is, but she mentioned this would be someone to get in touch with. There's there are some companies out there that they go out and trap dogs and things like that. But we can get into the other list if you'd like.
Yeah, you need to reach out for help, and you need to have a plan, right? So that's why, like, this local information, as far as the Massachusetts people and the New Hampshire people, these are places that you can head to. These are little things that you can write down. Make a note in your phone. Okay, I can do this if this happens. You're preparing ahead of time for worst case scenario, because of course no one ever wants their dog to be missing, but as soon as they're gone, it's about the most terrifying, most, like, worst few hours of your life or few days or whatever that you can imagine. All right, we're gonna go to break super quick, and we'll talk more about getting your dog back if it's lost when we return.
Want to keep up with all the latest from the Quirky Dog podcast like me and Murphy here? Then make sure you head on over to the YouTube channel and subscribe. Or if you prefer to listen to the madness, go on over to iTunes or Spotify and follow the Quirky Dog podcast. And hey, while you're there, leave a rating and review and let them know what you think of the show. Until then, keep it quirky.
All right, we're back. And I didn't add any more tequila, no judging. We still have half of a little nip of Patron left. We're not big tequila drinkers here. Okay, so a few things I want to talk about. If you are consistently losing your dog, like your dog is running away all the time, yes, of course, have a plan, but then you may want to back up. So these GPS collars are getting super popular. We are doing some research on the way here, and what was it? Whistleblower was one app?
Whistle Tracker.
Whistle Tracker.
Which a friend of ours owns, and she said
had
that
great success with it.
She has a hound-type dog that does like to roam and take off on occasion, and she told me that they found their dog through Whistle Tracker, through their GPS collar at 11 o'clock at night. It was 15 degrees out. And had they not found the dog, she might not have made it overnight.
Yeah. So in that collar, like Scott said, it's a good price point, $100. That is a good thing to think about. There's a lot of GPS collars out now. So some of the higher end Garmin ones are made for, like, actual hunters. They can track like 20 dogs or something on a screen. There's a map right in front of you. They're about, $800 for the device. And then of course you're buying all the collars. But you were researching the Halo collar on the way here as well.
Yeah, the Halo collar is an interesting newer product. I remember hearing about it last year, maybe almost 2 years ago now, and I didn't know anything about it. And when there seems to be too many features within a technology product, I get concerned because something might fail. But the bottom line is it's a GPS collar, but it's also an invisible fence collar that you can create the perimeter of your invisible fence through the app and through satellite, where you're making the perimeter, the fence line, on your app. So there's no hard going out and burying a line. And also another thing that's interesting about it. Now, personally, I don't trust invisible fences. I have too many clients that have run through them. Their dogs run through them.
Personally, for our own lifestyle, we would never do it.
One thing that I thought was pretty cool about this is that you could create up to 20 different fences, which means you could go to an open field and you could walk around that field with the collar and virtually put fence posts around the area where you want to let your dog run, and they will not, after they've been trained on this collar, they won't leave that area. So that was kind of an interesting thing. If you were traveling with your dog and you don't have a real strong recall, or you're just concerned for some reason about the dog, maybe, again, I wouldn't let my dog loose if he didn't have a good recall. But it's a way to contain your dog. And let's say you had a summer house. You go to the summer house, you can make a virtual fence around the backyard.
You have multiple invisible fence
Yeah, you have a couple of
options.
different homes. You stay at an Airbnb and it's got a big backyard. You can put a virtual fence around it. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, you have the feature of the invisible fence and the GPS tracking. That collar is normally like $900. Scott randomly was looking. They're doing a Black Friday sale. It's like $400 off. So if you're having chronic issues with the same dog leaving all the time, and you've been lucky enough to get the dog back and the dog comes back safe and sound, and there haven't been big issues, consider a GPS collar, because at some point or another, the system may break, and the last thing we want is you to have your dog injured or lost or whatever else. So circumstances are important. Whether you're at your own house or you're away from the home or whatever else, circumstances matter. And while this is kind of a bummer topic to do right before the holidays, it does tie in that when all of your family is coming over and everything for the holidays and the door's opening more frequently, and there's family members that have kids, they're not used to having a dog. Don't allow your dog to just be sneaking out the door in those moments, because that can happen when you're now in the kitchen trying to get Thanksgiving dinner ready. There's, a bunch of new people in your house. Your dog may be more stressed. Have a plan. The dog's either upstairs in a room, in a crate. If you live in a nice area where the weather stays nice, they're out in the backyard. Have a plan to proactively keep your dog safe during those times. And it's not that the dog shouldn't be around for Thanksgiving and Christmas, but there could be room for error. Same thing when you're out and about. You guys have to be very conscientious of everything that's happening around you at every moment. And Scott and I are notorious for this. Like, if we're out with our dogs, we are on them like white on rice, not because we're worried that they're going to blow us off, but we're very conscious of the circumstances. There was just a possum in our yard last night. There's deer on our property frequently. There's feral cats roaming around. If we're going to choose to have our drivey dogs off leash and without e-collars on, Cousteau wears an e-collar sometimes, but I have Cousteau out in the yard without an e-collar all the time as well. We need to make sure that we can control the situation. So circumstances matter. Maybe if there's 6 deer standing out in the backyard, I would put a lot more control on Cousteau or heel him or something else rather than just let him out to play ball right away. You want to be very conscious of being aware of your surroundings.
And I would like to add that we do not want or allow our dogs to kill small animals or chase small animals.
Oh, no.
And some people, in fact, a lot of my clients have told me, my dog killed a skunk, my dog killed a squirrel, my dog likes to hunt squirrels. It's a recreational activity.
Our animals respect other animals. That's exactly true. I'm glad you said that.
I don't care what they think about them. They're not going to be out killing them because
well,
it's a very...
Vital didn't bite the possum, so there's something going on.
She has no history of that.
Yeah.
And also, it's a rewarding experience for dogs to chase and kill. Sometimes all they want to do is chase this moving object. Once they kill it, they have no interest in it. But it's just not a good habit, because then when you're out hiking in the woods and they see a rustle in the bushes, all of a sudden, boom, they're gone. It's something else they can chase and kill.
Or they can see a little Yorkie in the woods and think that that's, a small animal again. Our dogs have a level of control on them that most people don't expect, because we frequently have dogs of all sizes in our homes, and our dogs need to be on their best behavior and definitely dialed in. So that's very true. Be very conscious of, if you allow that behavior, maybe make sure that your off-leash hiking in the woods has a lot of backup systems. If you are out and about in a big, vast area and you are just stressed out and for some reason you've lost your dog, consider contacting someone who may have a drone. It may be a friend. I think there's some drone companies out there. That's a good way to look and see about getting eyes on something, because nothing is more stressful than it hour upon hour upon hour upon hour passing and you still don't have eyes on the dog. That is not how you want to be living or dealing. So consider the drone.
I would add that in the fall and in the winter especially, a drone will be able to see a dog, whereas you're going to have a big canopy of leaves in the summer and spring where the drone probably wouldn't even see. You're not going to see the floor of the forest, wherever they are.
No, it's true.
And could I just add, what was I going to say? With regard to traveling and Thanksgiving, I know some clients that are traveling out of state with their dog to go visit relatives to have Thanksgiving. That's a good time to have a GPS collar, because
or at least bring your crate, even if you normally don't crate your dog, a way to contain your dog.
Yeah.
Yeah, if it's a new situation, think about being preventative.
Yeah, new territory. The dog is going to not know where to go. They're going to be out
well,
there.
And that's the thing. So if there's a familiarity factor, right? So the reason that dogs that run out of their yards frequently, and dogs who are escape artists that always get out of the yards, your dog likely has anxiety, just for what it's worth,
And they
just so
probably
you
come
know.
back.
Yeah, and they probably come back, but they're very familiar with the terrain. So when you're going to a new terrain, you got to be conscientious of that. If you're at a place where you hike frequently, or a terrain that the dog is very familiar with, somewhere you go to train frequently, a trail near your parents' house that you frequently take your dog to, everything else. If you lose the dog in that setting, be conscientious of putting something of yours that maybe has treats or something in it, something of value, but something that smells like you, where the dog was first lost. So there's like this baseline point of like, okay, the dog can come back to me. Also, secure this item, right? So like, we love our dogs. They're awesome. I hope we're never in this situation. But if Vital like ran up and saw a freaking vest on the ground with cookies in it, she would eat all the cookies out of the vest and then just start running around like dancing in the woods.
She'd
like,
probably shred the vest.
Woohoo! Yeah, like so much fun. Yeah, like it would just be a big party. Like, oh, good, they left me toys and treats, and I can't wait for mom to be back. So secure that item to something so it doesn't blow away. A heavy rock, tie it to something, but give your dog a baseline and a marker to go to if for some reason they do get loose and they're in this area where there's familiarity. Also, go
I was
ahead.
going to say that's an old hunting dog trick. I remember a guy telling me about that, where he would go out with beagles, hunting with beagles, and the extent of the hunting as far as training meant he just opened all the crates and a dozen beagles would run across the wilderness and tree raccoons and all that kind of stuff. And then they would come back, and every once in a while, one or two couldn't round him up. They just wouldn't come back. And he would just leave his coat on the ground right where he was parked, and he would come back the next day, and these dogs would be sleeping on his coat, waiting for him to come back and get him.
But it's a tried and true method, so that's why we're trying to share these things with you. If there's something else in your car, like if you're a guy that likes to spray Axe on you or something, or you're a woman that uses the same perfume and you have that scent near you, also spray that in the area where the dog is familiar. Stick to the area that your dog first left for quite some time, you know what I mean? Because half the time we get the word out there, there's these sightings, and it's not that people aren't genuine and that they can't use their eyes, but sometimes you're on a wild goose chase now, you hear about some sighting across town, you're like, oh my God, it's him, I'm gonna get in the car and go. Send somebody else that the dog knows to go and look at that point. Like, don't be running all around. Stay there, keep your scent there, stay centered. And most importantly, this is like a practice of how can I deal with stress? And in this moment, if for some reason you lose your dog, no matter who you are, right? Like this could easily be us, like anybody can lose their dog. Those who have not, it's sometimes just luck, like, right? A door can be left open. We lost Bammer one time on New Year's Day. We didn't even lose her. We didn't even know, but we were in the barn training dogs, and Scott's like, I think I hear Bammer howling. And I said, oh, I put her away. The door had blown open because of the wind. We lived in an old house in Massachusetts, and she was like out in our property, like behind a fence howling. And of course I let her in and she just ran to Scott. But this can happen to anyone, right? Like this is not some like, oh, they're less of a dog owner, or they're, less privileged or something else.
I can give you an example of before I met you.
Yeah.
My dog, we had a property, we were staying in Mass on a property that wasn't fenced. And so I put up a dog run, a dog trolley overhead with the drop down on the pulley. And my wife at the time had took my dog out, put her on the pulley, just to let him get some outdoor time for half hour, an hour, or something like that. Now I never used a leash to get him in and out. So when she went to bring him in, she unhooked him, said, come on, let's go to the house. And he just friggin' took off into the woods, just, out of the blue. And she called me in a panic, and I was, in a panic myself. And I was out there. The dog had a whistle recall. I was blowing my whistle, nothing. I contacted everyone that I needed to contact, and he came back to the house within 3 hours. He just went on a joy run, I guess, running around. But thank God he hadn't been hit by a car. That's why I was looking at streets. I want to make sure he wasn't hit.
And I'm glad that you prefaced it that way, because Scott described that experience that his ex-wife and him, it was just a complete panic. And that's exactly where I was headed. If this does happen to you, the most important thing is being able to calm yourself and have good decision-making skills in the moment. And that's very, very hard to do, right? When there's all this stress. So have almost like a roadmap or something. Like take some notes down, think of what you would do, kind of like an emergency plan, put it in your phone. Like, okay, this is the first thing I'm going to do. Don't just call everyone and text all your friends and be like, oh my gosh, he's gone. I'm so stressed out. What are the first things you do? Obviously, you try to get your dog back. Second thing, you're going to go to social media. You're going to post. It would suck if it was someone like us in a professional dog sense and like, oh my God, we've lost our dog. I know many dog professionals that have posted about that. You're going to post, you're going to get the word out. Even if you're not in the dog community and you're more of just like a pet dog owner, your neighbors see it. They're going to start sharing it. You're going to start getting this like massive response. So if it is, I would say probably I'd give things about 15 minutes. If I lost one of our dogs, I'd probably call Scott immediately. He probably wouldn't even answer if he was at a class. And I would say within 15 minutes, I would be on social media, like blasting that, just getting the word out, calling animal control, calling the police, doing all of these things. But in this moment, I may not be able to think through that. So have a system of like, okay, these are the steps I take. These are the people I call. These are the people that I might be able to trust that could leave work and help me with this. Because that's another thing. If you have this like local search party, you need people that are going to take time out of their day to actually help you. And some strangers are going to be kind enough to help you. But be prepared and get yourself in as strong of a headspace as you possibly can. And I know that sounds unimaginable, but you have to be thinking as clearly as possible because just like Scott described, it's going to be panic. So you may not know what to do. And if it's panic and you're just sitting in the woods crying for 2 hours, I understand, totally emote to you, and I understand that you're feeling that, and I totally get it. But it's important to take action as soon as possible.
Yeah, and also with regard to social media, like my friends, I'm never on Facebook. I do have an account, but like they're all over the country. Account. But a lot of people, dog people, are part of dog groups, local dog groups, and that's a great resource because, like, when we were in Amesbury, there was the Dogs of Woodsome Farm. Yeah. So that's a local kind of what do you call that area? But it's a protected land.
Preserve.
Like preserve. Big open area where people go with their dogs. So you post on that, and now you're tapping into hundreds of local people that have dogs that can get out there and be keeping their eyes open. We had remember a dog was lost on Christmas Day, I think it was. Yeah. And the woman posted it on social media, and we went out. We took off.
We started
friggin' looking for that dog for like 2 hours.
No, it's true, and this happens, and especially if you're familiar with the person or you know the parents, have kids at the same school as you or something else, you may be more than willing. And yeah, it was freaking Christmas Day, and Scott and I are out in the woods
hunting for someone else's
an hour
dog.
and a half to try to help because we're like, holy shit, like that's terrifying.
We would think if it was our dog.
Yeah, we would want the same thing. And be generous with these things. Like, don't be judgy. If, you have signs up all over your neighborhood and stuff, like, think, like, how can I help? Like, keep a mindful and keen eye out for the dog while you're driving around.
At that point, I don't care what anyone thinks about me. I want to get my dog back.
No, it's 100% true. So have a plan for these types of things. If you've never lost your dog before, you are in a privileged situation. Yeah, like there is nothing worse than having this kind of panic, dog stuff. There's no science, and you can lose your kids. Like, things can get lost.
That wouldn't be as serious, but it can help.
Wouldn't be as serious. Stop. But really, like, and get yourself, I don't want to kind of manifest the worst case scenario in a sense with this, but think of this. Like, what would I do if this happened? What would I do if I was traveling internationally for, some sort of dog sport, agility, bite sports, whatever else? What would I do if I lost my dog here? What would I do? Are you bringing a dog, a GPS collar? Those air tags are really cool now. A lot of people have those air tags. They only work within, 200 feet of the phone?
Yeah, the Apple product.
Yeah.
And Jess was telling me that a way that people do use them, which I hadn't considered, was it's to make sure their dog is in the plane in cargo while they're in the passenger part of the plane, because they know that the dog is there because of their...
Yeah, I would freaking...
What do they call that thing? The tag? Air tag?
They call it an air tag, yeah. But and it's only within 200 feet of your phone, but at least if you're sitting on the plane, you know your dog's been loaded into cargo. I have flown my dog's cargo quite a few times, and it can be stressful. When I was a little girl, I'm going into the pilot, and I'm like, hey, like my dog's underneath. Like, can you please make sure the cabin pressure is as good as possible? I'm looking out the window to try to watch my dog. The airline people lie, and I'm not trying to stress you guys out and make this a whole to-do, but they'll say, oh, yeah, my dog's on the plane. It has happened to me time and time and time again, and then, 25 minutes later, I see the dog coming on the plane. Or even worse, I was flying back to Newark from the Dominican Republic one time. They came on the plane, and they said, your dogs aren't going to make this flight, ma'am. They'll be on the next flight. I was sobbing at the front of the plane. I got off the plane. I made a big scene. I'm like, no. I don't fly to New Jersey while my dogs stay here in the Dominican Republic. I went and I walked into the warehouse where they were staying with the mangoes. I took them out of their crates, and I marched right up to the air-conditioned, head honcho's office, and I waited till the next flight when they were on. But the AirTag is a great setup for that type of system. But however, with it only being 200 feet, it's not going to help you if the dog's just lost or running away from home or out in the woods.
The past couple times, and it's been years now, but the past couple times I've flown dogs in cargo, they came and gave me a slip of paper in my passenger seat and said, your dog's been loaded.
Yeah.
And I trusted that it was.
Yeah, it depends on the
You know,
airline.
I
but
could
the
actually
AirTags-
watch it, though. I watched the grate going up the...
But the air tags are a nice addition to that. So just be thoughtful of these things. We don't want it to happen to you over the holidays. We don't want it to happen to you ever. There is nothing more tragic. When I was young, I had a dog that was hit by a car. It ran out the gate while my dad was bringing in the drop cloths. He was a house painter. October 21st. I was probably freaking 12 years old. And both Zoe and this other dog chased a cat. The gate was open every day. Ran, got hit by a car. There was nothing more traumatizing than coming home from orchestra practice that day and the dog being laid out, dead on a freaking lawn chair. Like, this is traumatizing stuff that can happen when dogs get lost, but have a plan, because sometimes you can get your dog back if you act appropriately and keep your head space clear and everything else. And most importantly, out of all of this that we've talked about, if your dog has been gone for multiple days, multiple weeks, sometimes even multiple months, have hope, you guys. There are stories out there that are unfreaking believable of what dogs have lived through, how they have gotten back to their owners, what conditions they've been in. The other people have even been just caring for them, and then they finally are able to return the dog to the owner. So please have hope. Don't think of it as a lost cause. And while, of course, we're going to want to beat ourselves up and everything else, it happens. It happens owning dogs. This kind of stuff can happen.
Yeah, and I would say if you have a purebred that is, you want to buy a puppy and it's like $2,000-$3,000 for the puppy, there's a possibility someone scooped that dog up and they're thinking, wow, this is a great dog. Someone didn't care about him. I'm going to keep this dog. And you hope that isn't the case, but at least if there's a chip in him and whatnot, there's a good chance that 6 months later, for some reason, the dog is in getting a checkup at the vet, something's going on, and they're going to, alert's going to come up on the chip.
And with that said, if it's been multiple years, in your head, just think the dog's living somewhere happy. Like, don't think worst case scenario in your head. When you lay your head down on the pillow every night, think to yourself, at least this dog's being cared for, and not think like, oh, he's out being eaten by coyotes.
Yeah, if you don't have a body, then he's alive and well.
And
that's
the last
my
two
feeling.
things I want to say in relation to this, if the dog runs away from the house or runs away when it's away from the house, have ways to reach the dog that are louder than you. Same reason Scott says bring a whistle to the beach for your recall. Bring a whistle in the woods to be able to communicate with your dog. Yelling, whistling. Have their favorite toy. Maybe their favorite toy is the multi-pet pig. Maybe you guys should consider buying a pig and then having the pig in the woods. But have a way to attract the dog back to you, because especially if it's just you or a couple other people, you may become hoarse. Things are going to get tricky. So be very conscientious of these things. And we're not trying to prepare for worst case scenario. We're not trying to manifest worst case scenario, but if you have a plan, it may be less stressful if this ever happens to you. So we just wanted to give you some tips. This has been a personal thing for us this past few months, and we wanted to talk it through. Next week, we have a very special guest on who is the director of Camp Gone to the Dogs. And the week after that, we're having Ask the Dog Guy, John Wade, on. We got a whole exciting lineup planned. In the meantime, happy
Have
Thanksgiving.
a happy Thanksgiving and a safe one with the dogs.
We are grateful for you guys, and I'm grateful for you. Cheers.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.